Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the McTavish Shedcast. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined in my shed this evening by Richard Arnold, the showbiz editor at GMB, and Jackie Kabler, who's a best-selling crime novelist and also QVC presenter. Thank you both so much for joining me. I'm sure you had very busy diaries, so I'm glad you've found space. Richard, how are you coping with lockdown?
I think I'm still quite robust in spirit. I think we all have days, don't we, where we're trying to figure out what sort of role we have now that everything has changed, obviously so quickly and so dramatically. Every day you count your blessings. You're grateful for the people who are at the actual front of the engine of this invidious virus and who are battling on our behalf. And I won't lie to you, I'm missing my mother. She's 83 years of age. So that's a bit of a chore. She's coping very, very well. She's of that generation. And in fact, she was speaking to friends of mine this morning and they relayed the message, said she's happy to stay at home until Christmas as long as it saves lives. But she doesn't live too far from here. And as her only son and obviously only dependent, I am sort of within my rights to pay her a call every now and then. But she's very, very stoic, very robust. And I mean, she was a Shire lass. Dad was a Cockney, so you can imagine we've sort of got that blitz spirit going on in the clan at the moment. So I'm very proud of her. So altogether, not too bad. Some mornings you wake up a little bit heavy of heart like most people, and then you sort of talk yourself into the day and realise just how lucky you are. And if all you've got to do is stay at home, then frankly, you are still doing your bit and contributing your verse.
I believe she wouldn't listen to you early on, though. She would only listen to Dr. Hillary issuing the instructions.
It's so true. I'm like, mother. Gloves, now a mask, of course, and washing your hands, and I suppose they're of that age, really, and I am blessed because, as I say, she is very healthy. So it's not without its frustrations for that generation, is it, to sort of be under lock and key, if you like. But yes, she taps into Dr. Hillary every morning, as she has done. Ever since she saw Dr. Lee on the box all those years ago, and obviously she knows he's a mate and a colleague. So she listens to Dr. Hillary. And finally, obviously, she got the message very early on. But Dr. Hillary is her go-to man. I think she, even at 83, prefers the silver fox.
Jackie, how about you? How are you getting on? Because you're living in one of the most beautiful places to be in lockdown. You're in the Cotswolds, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in Gloucestershire and I'm so lucky I can still get out into the countryside just behind my house. I live just right by the highest point in the Cotswolds, so I can get up there, and I'm a big runner, so I get out every day and have a little run in the hills and see nobody at all. So social distancing is really easy here, which is fantastic. Oh, that's me. That's me running. Yes, I ran 1,000 miles for charity last year. That was one of the things from last year. So not as much running this year. But no, lockdown generally is okay. I'm actually one of the fortunate few that has actually been able to work through it, albeit on reduced hours because QVC is still broadcasting. So I've been doing that. But apart from that, obviously spending every single minute at home. My husband is a doctor for the NHS, so he's obviously been quite busy as we've gone through the last few weeks. And I've been doing a lot of writing, which is great as a writer to have that enforced time at home, because as many writers know, you tend to procrastinate quite a lot and start watching cat videos on YouTube and so on instead of writing. So being forced to stay at home when I'm not going to work has actually been probably quite good for the old writing as well.
Well, we'll get on to your writing later on, but we've got a really hard-hitting question to start off the programme. Lynn McDonald wants to know how you're both dealing with your hair. You're both on screen. It's the big issue. We're all dealing with it. So, Jackie, how are your roots doing, love?
Do you know what? They're not too bad, but I was really lucky. Just my regular hair appointment fell literally days before all the salons closed. So I got it done just before lockdown. So I would have been due about last week to get the roots done. So actually they're just starting to come through now, which isn't great. But I've been buying all this stuff online because I don't know. I've bought some blonding shampoo, some blonding conditioner, some blonding spray, some root touch-up, and I'm going to start using it all this coming week. So goodness knows what's going to happen. I'll probably end up with orange hair or something. But I'm going to have to give it a go because I'm going to look like a badger in the next few weeks. It's going to be awful.
Jackie, I mean, we first met Jackie obviously many years ago at GMTV, ITV Breakfast Other
Yeah.
incarnation, where we sort of blossomed and ripened. I would suggest, and you've ripened beautifully. You've not aged a jot. Frankly, as far as the Barnet is concerned, I'm just grateful to have it. And the 80s was kind of my generation, so the more bouffant it gets. I was in the States shortly before lockdown was introduced and Donald Trump pulled up the drawbridge to the UK. So I had a cheeky little not so much a buzz cut, but a little bit of a tonsorial titification before I came back. But I suppose it's been a couple of months now. Friends of mine, though, I've got a lovely couple of friends who live out in St Albans, and they're in their early 70s. And Judy is proudly ginger. I don't think she remembers her original hair colour, but her her husband Mel, who's marginally older than her good self, they had a Tesco bag dropped off at the end of the driveway from Judy's hairdresser with a little box of hair colour in it and all the kit to dye the hair. So I suppose we're all making a shift, aren't we?
Now, my sister-in-law also had her hairdresser phone up and offer to drop off her regular hair dye. They know how to just get you, don't they? And they said, so that'll be £60 for dropping off your hair dye.
Wow.
And it was an opt-out service. Not an opt-in, an opt-out. And so she actually had to say, no, it's okay. Do you know what? We'll live with the roots. Nobody's going to see them. Now, you mentioned, Richard, that you both worked at GMTV together. Did you see much of each other? Because, Jackie, you had a bizarre job. You were like ships that pass in the night, I'm guessing.
Yeah, because Richard was obviously in the studio. I suppose you're out interviewing Hollywood celebs and stuff, but you were in the studio a lot, and I was on the road as a reporter. So I was in my wellies, my waders, up in Scotland, down in Cornwall, over in wherever, traveling the world basically all the time, and very rarely being in the studio actually. So
I think we've got some glamorous shots of you
together. Oh, have you? Oh, excellent.
Yes, got
good.
very glamorous. Yeah. Oh no, that's later on. But no, the pond life. Yes.
Yes, this was the year that the whole country, the waterways, I don't know what year it was, sometime in the early 2000s, I guess, when all the waterways in the country became full of this duckweed stuff. And I remember all the other news reporters, the Sky and the BBC and everyone else were all reporting from the bank. But GMTV said, just get in. We'll get you a dry suit. Just get into it. Report from in the water. I was like, great. I remember I got my foot stuck in a shopping trolley in there and I had to be yanked out. But the camera crew was awful. Yeah, it was a glamorous job, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, you're right, Jack. I suppose I was in more sort of fragrant surroundings because I was in the studio having my Colorado bass applied, and I'd always look at you in waders and think, blimey, that looks Baltic. But as you know, the crew were as equally spirited as your good self in the sense that you'd have to get the shot, whatever happens, and even, whenever you're out on the road, you have to get the shot, no matter the jeopardy, and that was always the money. And you could be 30 seconds before going to air, couldn't you? And you'd be knee deep in something, and you'd be like, "Well, we've got to make this work.
Yeah.
We've got to make this work." My only jeopardy akin to that was when I had to go to the Ideal Home exhibition, or many years ago, and do a live, and we couldn't get in, and then we had to fill this jacuzzi, and obviously the jacuzzi was just completely, like I say, Baltic. It was just full of frozen water because there was no heating. But we got the shot. We got the shot. I look like the baby that's been thrown out with the bathwater, but we got the shot. Yeah, that was my no more topless shots for me, Jackie.
Do you know what I was thinking when I was looking at the photos that the two of you had sent in, which we'll see a bit more of in a moment? I was thinking it is actually just like scenes from Bridget Jones's Diary, and I know the director Erin Gordon was actually in Bridget Jones's Baby as a director, but the whole life it is exactly like the film, isn't it?
I mean, I remember being called. We used to get called at sort of maybe 2 a.m. in the winter and just told, go and find snow. Just go. We want snow on the programme. Go and find snow. And we'd have to get in our cars at 2 a.m. and just drive, generally drive north, because you thought, well, north is probably going to be where the snow is. The Peak District was always a good bet to go there. But things like that, I mean, you had to provide snow for 6 a.m. when we went on air, or you'd be in trouble, It was just those calls. You just think, I look back now and I think, how did I do that for so many years, But it was great. It was a great life at the time,
Well, let's say hello to some of the people who are watching. We have got Shona and Louise Cleland, who I believe are watching from Edinburgh, and they taught you everything you know about cleaning, Richard.
they're two of my oldest, dearest friends, and they run a B&B in Edinburgh, and it was Cleland Clean. There's Clean and there's Cleland Clean, two sisters, and they sort of dragged me up in a waft of Jif Mousse and other cleaning products because I lived with them for quite some time. So thanks to them, yes, I discovered what a skirting board was, and I learned how to get on all fours and clean it. So I have nothing but respect for those ladies. In fact, I talk to them every day. It's lovely to see you girls.
Well, we've got Emma and Mike watching in Aberdeen. Peter Sampson, who I know is a dear friend of yours, Richard, he's watching. Margaret Wilson. Scott Greengrass is a huge fan of both of you, and he wanted to say hi to both of you.
Hi, Scott. Yeah, we know Scott. He's lovely.
He's a gorgeous.
We've got a few more questions coming in as well. Let's move on to a question that was asked by both Andrea Bateson and Claire Walsh. This is for you, Richard. And Jackie, you might not have as glamorous answer, but I still want your answer as well. Who has been your most memorable guest out of all of them, Richard?
Oh my goodness, there have been so many. I mean, when I interviewed Tony Bennett in an apartment in New York, my dad, God bless him, he it was like I'd won the World Cup. Celine Dion sang Happy 50th Birthday to me. That's not a shock revelation. That's available for a comment on Wikipedia just before Christmas. But I mean, there was some great. I mean, as always, and Jackie will probably agree as well with all the people that she's met as well. Inevitably, the real narrative and the real sizzle, if you like, behind these interviews is less to do with the subject and more to do with the story around actually either getting the interview or the the process you go through during the actual interview. So Cher was magnificent. I interviewed Cher a couple of years ago when she released the album of ABBA covers, from Mamma Mia. But probably the most memorable was Mariah Carey, who we flew all the way to Vegas just for a couple of days to interview Mariah. And Ben Shepherd, my colleague, had said, she likes to be on a sort of chaise longue when you're interviewing her. And I think, okay, great. So we arrived at the hotel in Vegas at Caesars, and the word came via our producer from Mariah's people, as they say in the hurly-burly world of showbiz, Mariah will be standing. And so I automatically thought, as Jackie, it was a sort of standing interview. You're thinking, oh my goodness me, we're only going to get 3 minutes with her. But we've come all the way from London to Vegas for this interview. So I sent a message from my people to Mariah's people and said, we'd actually prefer a sit-down interview. That's why we've come all this way. And then the message came back from Mariah's people to say, Mariah is happy for Richard to sit, but Mariah will be standing. So eventually when we go into the room, I understood why. And as you saw from the picture there, Mariah, who's very voluptuous, bumped and lumped in all the right places, if I may be so bold, but she was in such a heavily boned dress, she couldn't actually sit down. So she was put in position. So we ended up doing a face-to-face interview. And at the end of the interview, I said, because I came all this way, and I said, is it all right if we have a picture? And sort of Mariah's people all looked at Mariah to get the sign-off, as so happens, so often happens with these sort of Hollywood A-listers, got the sign-off. And then I walked across the room into Mariah's light, and it was like the stairway to heaven. I've never been so beautifully lit. It was blinding, absolutely blinding. But she was incredibly eloquent, does a great British accent, and she knows her stuff. She's a smart cookie. So, like I say, it's usually the stories around the interviews rather than the subjects themselves that grab the attention, or certainly make the memories for me.
So, working with such a huge diva, how did Mariah cope, Richard?
Nice one, Rachel.
I think Jackie would confirm, along with my Good Morning Britain colleagues over the last 20 odd years, that I'm very generous to work with. As long as I've got my Colorado Sunset base, I'm very, very happy. And I tell you what, ladies, I've been saying this a lot on these calls that we've all been doing, obviously, because we're sort of at home, is everyone else seems to have all the production and they're all up to speed and they've got beautiful lights and everything like that. I've literally got a candle. Literally got a candle in my shed, that's what, at least it's a fragrant one. Yeah, little wild mint candle, but that's as far as I go with the lighting. So I've really got to raise my game in this current climate.
Now, Jackie, some of the interviews that you've done, I mean, yours have been of a slightly different slant, haven't they? They've been much more heavy-going interviews, which probably leads me on to your transition into working as a crime novelist. You got given all the crime stories for a lot of the time at GMTV, didn't you?
I did, although really briefly, I have to tell you that one of my most memorable was when I interviewed George Clooney. Partly because it was George Clooney, but also because I made a complete idiot of myself and mortified myself. It was at the premiere of the Perfect Storm, the film The Perfect Storm, and I remember thinking, well, he plays a fisherman, so I'm going to ask him something different than nobody else is going to ask him. I thought I'll ask him what his favorite fish is. Oh my goodness! And so I said, hey George, so what's your favorite fish? And he just sort of looked at me and went, to eat or to look at? And I thought, oh no, I haven't thought this through, have I? I haven't thought this through. And I said, well, to eat, I suppose. And he went, tuna, I suppose. And he just looked at my cameraman like, who is this mad woman and what is she asking me about a fish for? So that was quite memorable. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, I did tend to get a lot of the big crime stories. I covered, obviously, the Sower murders was extremely memorable for all the wrong reasons, and Madeleine McCann, and lots of high-profile crime cases. When there was a sniper loose in Washington killing random people, I was sent to Washington to cover that. So yeah, my interviews definitely tended to be more of the serious nature and unpleasant nature as well over the years too.
But that led you to move away from working in news, and you've focused a lot of your time on writing. There was 3 novels, the Cora Baxter crime series, strangely set in a newsroom, which leads us on to one of our questions, which was this was from Liz. Did you find it very tempting to write about people who had perhaps annoyed you and give them a horrendous role and bump them off in your Cora Baxter series?
Well, my Cora Baxter series, yes, which was my 3 early books, they were set in a breakfast television newsroom. And I would say I was inspired by people I worked with and people I encountered, but I was always very careful if I was going to bump one of them off to change the person drastically. So to change a man maybe into a woman, and etc. So nobody actually ever knew. But no, definitely, I was inspired. I was inspired by people I met during those years. Yeah, and I think some people did kind of recognise themselves and have asked me, but my lips are sealed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well. But this is a question from Paul, who's sitting in the corner of the shed. And I, like you, Jackie, I adore crime fiction. Absolutely adore it. Read it endlessly. And he says, and I can see where he's coming from because it's something that's obviously been preying on his mind. Does it bother your husband that you've got the sort of mind that's forever plotting murder and how to get away with it? Hashtag lockdown.
I have actually thought about this quite a lot. I mean, he's quite handy being a doctor, so I can ask him gory questions like, if you stab someone through the eye, how long would the knife need to be to penetrate the brain and stuff like that? But so he's quite useful. But I do sort of think if the police ever had cause to investigate my Google search history, the things that crime writers end up Googling is so bizarre. All these really graphic. If you push someone out of a 5-story window, what sort of injuries are they likely to have, and how likely are they to die, and stuff like that. I mean, if that's a regular thing that I will be Googling. So no, my husband, I don't think he's scared, but I think he does get slightly disturbed by how my mind works, let's say. But I think he's all right. I'm not going to hurt him. It all goes down on paper, you see. That's the thing. Crime writers get it all out on paper, and then we're really jolly in real life.
Whereas I just keep it all pent up and just keep on reading those crime novels. Right, let me do a few hellos because there's so many people watching. It's lovely. Peter saying a stellar lineup tonight. Betty Brands is watching from Milton Keynes. The Pink Wheelbarrow as well. Peter Martin watching. Katrina Hurd. May Miller watching as well. And Liam Dolan. Frida Martin, great show as always. Daniela teachers on Facebook, they quite often change the spellings of the names so that the kids can't find them. And when they're searching on Facebook, Daniela said, "I love Richard. He's so funny." What do you want to know, Paul? Sorry, Paul's just lobbing in questions from the back.
I heard him asking about wallpaper.
Do you like the wallpaper, Paul? Is that what you're wanting for our downstairs loo? That's what. Right. Okay. Right. Well. Kim Morley's watching as well. We've got Julia Posner, friends with Gudrun, apparently, that you know, Richard Gudrun.
Yeah, Gudrun Steele. Yeah.
Yes. So that Julia's watching as well. We're talking about Jackie's change of career, Richard, and just wondering, are you going to take your acting any more seriously? Because towards the end of last year, I hope that Paul's got a picture here that we can see of you had a part in Neighbours. Explain the outfit. Wow. Paul didn't realise it was actually a costume.
It was the first time that I played a cameo as myself, or first time I wasn't myself, I beg your pardon, and I was playing a character called Graham, who was a sinister cult leader. It was one episode of Neighbours that we filmed in London with Stefan Dennis, and as you see there, my co-star Denise Van Outen, who is a notorious twinkler, and we did Strictly together in 2012, but I'd known Denise for years before that, having interviewed with her and sunk the odd flute of bubbles out and about. But it's the first time we sort of acted together, and probably the first time that I'd actually acted properly, or at least attempted it. And I learned two very valuable lessons, aside from the jeopardy of obviously being with Denise and trying to deliver these rather sinister lines to someone I was supposed to be brainwashing. I learned that as an actor that you don't call cut even if you fluff, you let the director do it. But also it pays to read the entire scene and not just learn your own lines, so you actually know when to deliver your line. So it's no wonder that even pantomime has evaded me so far. But it was a spectacular afternoon, and my mum loves Neighbours, and I grew up with it when I was growing up in Scotland. It was all the rage when I left school about 16, and I was cutting grass for Grampian Regional Council and stacking shelves at William Lowe's, and we'd always do a double dose of Neighbours because it was on twice a day back in the mid-80s, of course, when it first took hold in this country. So it was quite a moment. It was a nice little bucket list moment, and they did actually ask me if I would consider going back to celebrate Neighbours' anniversary this year, but obviously the travel restrictions in place, so it didn't quite happen. That'll be my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
Can I just say, Stefan Dennis, has he aged at all?
No.
And sorry if you don't watch Neighbours, but what was his character in Neighbours? Was it
Paul Robinson?
Paul Robinson. He doesn't age.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fabulous.
Age at all. Yeah, he's been there from the beginning. He's torn through as many on-screen partners as I have. You know what the Jeopardy's like at breakfast television, Jackie. But he's great. And again, he is. I keep using the word spirited, but when someone's been in harness that long in a particular role, they get it. And that they know that they're held in certainly high affection by cast members alike, and also other people watching. So it may be just a day job to them, but they don't sort of take it for granted. But it was brilliant, and even then when we were out and about filming in St James's Park, people were recognising him, and of course he's so used to that now coming over to London because the UK's still got such a strong fan base for it. So yeah, he's a lovely lad.
Right, but we're going on to another question now. Worst moments on TV, Jackie. You now are very well known as a QVC presenter. You left the world of news behind you. As we say, you became a best-selling novelist. I have to say, perfect couple. I finished reading it yesterday. It is
thank you.
Superb, absolutely superb. And it's only, I think it's under £1, 99 pence on Kindle at the moment before the actual paperback's released. So if you're looking for a good book to read, I loved it, absolutely loved it. More ideas, murder ideas up here. All ticking away. But in the world of QVC, you've mentioned that it's all unscripted, it's flying by the seat of your pants. What has been your worst moment?
Oh my goodness, there's been so many because because it is all live and unscripted, and you're often on air for maybe 3 hours at a
Uh-huh.
time, and you get tired as well, and then you end up saying things and I fall over a lot. I'm quite clumsy, and I remember
Uh-huh.
once we had it was a gardening show, and we had this plant, and it had one beautiful flower on it. That was all, and this plant was appearing through the day on QVC in a number of gardening shows. And I'm sort of showing the plant and demonstrating it and everything, and suddenly I knock the flower off, the one flower that was on the plant,
Oh
and then I'm trying
no.
to panic and trying not to let anyone see and thinking, can I get some sellotape? I mean, how am I going to? So that was quite bad. But I tend to say things like I tend to say. I don't even want to say them on here really, but I say slightly
Oh, you
inappropriate
can.
words.
We've got
Sometimes
no rules.
can I?
Yeah,
Oh
no
wow.
rules.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I should though. Still, but no, I sometimes just say like the wrong thing, and I'll use a word that I shouldn't really use, and then I'll start to laugh, and you can't explain why you're laughing really, and then it's live, and you just start laughing and laughing, and they have to go to a break, and it happens quite a lot. I did have I think you've seen this. I had a kitchen hour that they made me do on my own once, and I am literally the worst person in the world in the kitchen. I honestly can't boil an egg. And everything went wrong. I was grating some cheese with some machine, and it all went flying off all over the place, and then it wouldn't work, and then I got a carrot stuck in this thing, and then I had to break an egg, and the shell was it was just the whole thing. I can't honestly. So it happens quite a lot on QVC. But do you know what? People generally laugh with you, not at
Yes.
you, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
I
am notorious for being clumsy and dropping things and
I
breaking
do
things.
remember saying things you shouldn't say on air when the ITN and ITV had their 24-hour news channel. I did say once, Portillo won't want to leave William Hague's side this close to an erection. And it was, and everybody in the gallery falling back and knowing that I was in there for another 2 hours. So I just had to keep on going.
Yeah.
And talking about an aircraft carrier deploying troops to Iraq, and a picture of an enormous 10-foot Jaffa cake came up behind me, and I was captioned Osama bin Laden. I mean, it was a great month, was that? It was. Now, Richard, I know there's something. One of your most memorable interviews perhaps coincides with one of your
Yeah.
painful moments as well, Stevie Wonder.
It does indeed. I think, as Jackie will know, and as you know, Rach, as well, with live TV, you can sort of fluff your way out of it, talk your way out of it, and people are generally tuned in because they kind of like what you're doing anyway. So you can always get yourself out of dodge. But if you find yourself in a pre-recorded situation, you can find yourself a little bit more clammy palmed. And I had a, shall we say, not to put it too indelicately, but quite a river in my valley when I interviewed Stevie Wonder, because I was a big fan. And this was a pre-recorded interview when we did the Richard Arnold show, which we did for a couple of summers to fill a bit of dead air on GMTV as it was at the time. And so I had this audience with Stevie Wonder, and it was one of those interviews that, you know, is going so well, and it's like, you know, they say never meet your idols, but this was just brilliant, and I loved it, and I loved it, and I loved it. And I got so excited that at the end of the interview, I went to high five him. And it was, I thought, oh, please, I'll have to lose this in the edit. But there was just this moment where I had my hand up, and I went, don't leave me hanging. And God bless him, he found my hand. But it was just because I got so carried away. So it was excruciating.
Dear.
It was excruciating. And as I say, I was just grateful that that's the sort of thing that kind of ends up on the cutting room floor. And if it had been live, I mean, Jackie, Rach, it would have been an absolute nightmare. But he was very generous about it, as were his people.
There's another question here that's been sent in. This was emailed from a very organised viewer, from Shirley Mullen. She says, Richard, you must have been to some great after-show parties. Who was the best host? And have you experienced lots of gossip and scandal? She said, what happens in the shed stays in the shed. Thanks, Shirley, but I think we know that that's not true. So who was the best host? And have you seen some really good scandal on your you don't need to name names, but just give us a tidbit.
No. Well, I'll save them for the book, which I'll actually commission Jackie to ghostwrite for me. So if it stays in the shed, well, here we are. I'm in my shed now.
You're in your shed.
I'm in my shed now. Gossip and scandal. Well, I suppose you sort of witness certain things, a little bit of
Uh-huh.
frisson with people and puckering up, particularly it's something like the National TV Awards, because uh, that tends to unravel spectacularly because it just feels like for a lot of the people there from all the channels, it's just like a staff party. So that can get a little bit hot and messy. But if I've covered the red carpet, I tend to throw myself in a fast waiting car and just back home and have the dinner on my lap. That said, I had my fair share of fun in the 90s. I remember trying to gate crash once with my friend Vic. We were both journalists at the time on a TV magazine, and I remember trying to gate crash Rod Stewart's birthday party. And getting the leg over the rope. You'd be so bold back then, because obviously we were a lot younger, and it was our misspent youth starting out as fledgling journalists and stuff. So I've had my moments like that. I've never been so grateful than when I tried to gate crash the National TV Awards party when it was held at the Albert Hall, and then the party was opposite in a venue there. And I walked in, and I had like a bag. It was like a gym bag or something, and I just threw it under this trestle table where all the booze was. And Christopher Biggins, Lisa Riley both came up to darling like that, and I thought, right, I'm in. But I, in all honesty, I haven't sort of witnessed any kind of Jackie Collins-esque type sort of scandals. I've heard the stories, but no, I've never witnessed anything per se. Or frankly, perhaps I don't even remember the party was that good.
That's what we like to hear.
How diplomatic was that?
Very well done. Stay on the line afterwards. We want to know all the details. Jackie, we've had a question in from Sue. She said we saw a photo of you earlier with your incredible training for the ultra marathon, which you're going to be doing as perhaps next year if things are different with getting out and about. She said, what motivates you? Sue wants to know what makes you get up and get going and do those incredible runs.
I don't know. It's weird. I came to running really late. I used to run a bit, but never more than 10K until about 4 or 5 years ago. And I suddenly just decided to start running more. I just realised I really enjoyed it. And I was spending a lot of time in my car, in a windowless TV studio, or at my writing desk. And I thought I need something else. So I thought I've always enjoyed running. I'm going to start running more. And that ended up last year doing the 1,000 miles for charity, which is the equivalent of running 38 marathons or 76 half marathons. I did a mix. So I did over 40 half marathons. I did several marathons. I just did a big
mix of distances.
And then I started training for an ultra marathon, which is a 50K race, which is a marathon. And then you just keep going for a bit. But that was cancelled. I was due to do that in March, and of course that was cancelled due to what's going on. So I'm hoping to do that again. But I don't know, I've become addicted, I think, honestly. I think I just love it. And it's something about challenging yourself. I'm in my 50s. I was never the sporty one. At school, I was never picked for the teams. I couldn't dive in swimming. I couldn't hit the ball in tennis. I couldn't score a goal in hockey. I was that swotty kid who was rubbish at sport. And to be able to feel now in my 50s that I'm fitter than I've ever been in my life, and that I can run marathons and, kind of almost at the drop of a hat, is kind of amazing to me. And it sort of, if I told myself even 20 years ago that I'd be doing that now in my 50s, I would be astounded. So I just like that feeling of being fit and strong and challenging myself to run further and further and further, really. So I'm hoping I will get to that ultra marathon distance in maybe October time this year. But it's just something I've become obsessed with. Oh, well, it's fun, honestly. It is fun. Most of the time. When you get to about 25, 26 miles, it starts to hurt quite a lot.
No, Richard,
25, 26 miles. Oh, my goodness. No.
Richard, you are no stranger to challenging yourself. You've done so many dance challenges. Of course, you took part in Strictly, and then you obviously got bitten by the dancing bug because you've taken part in quite a few dancing challenges. Peter has asked, your friend Peter Sampson, he wants to know, are you ever tempted for your next challenge to actually go into the jungle and do I'm a Celebrity rather than just covering it from the other side of the camera? Would you do that?
Yeah, do you know, that's an interesting question from Peter, because Peter and I actually met when he was in Australia, when the first time I ever covered I'm a Celebrity, which was like 2009. We've been friends ever since. So it's a really good question. It's the one that whenever I've interviewed people when they've come out of it, the majority of people, I've heard very rarely have I heard any bad experiences from that experience when the celebrities take part in it. So it's the one that I would be most encouraged to do. And obviously, Kate, my dear friend Kate, did so well last year. I mean, it would be very difficult to follow in her footsteps because she was absolutely magnificent. But I would love to do it. And I think, I suppose, back to that point of us all ripening into the third act of our lives, I too was always off games, Jackie, at school, never picked for the team. My head's far too big for my own body, so my centre of gravity this really wasn't conducive to either kicking a ball around or doing anything, any kind of sports that involved other people. So it's those sort of challenges, I think, that you look for as you sort of past certain milestones in your career. And yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat, but I don't know whether I'd be able to do it because I've already seen the mechanic in the jungle, and how small the space is. But I would. I'd absolutely do it. I've done a couple of jungle challenges over the years when I've gone over there to cover it. I think the only thing that would terrify me is when they walk out on that plank. I think I'd rather I don't mind being strapped to a bloke in a harness, throwing myself out of a plane, even though I'm terrified of heights. But there's an added bonus there because you're in very safe hands, very safe, strong hands. But the idea of walking a plank off the side of a building in Brisbane would be. I don't think I could do that. But I suppose that would be the challenge for me.
Now, do you think that things will change after we've seen the wet markets in Wuhan criticised? Do you think things will change, perhaps with the challenges? We won't be seeing people eating live bugs and witchetty things, and there won't be quite the same culinary challenges.
The culinary challenges that sort of test their gag reflexes, I suppose so. I mean, there's been a general sort of movement towards those anyway, hasn't there? There's been a lot of noise gradually getting louder over the years of how politically correct or how tasteful those sort of challenges are. So I couldn't speak for the production team, but it does actually, of course, it means punters will lose out of that those wonderful moments. But yeah, I suppose that's something that will be constantly under review, won't it? It's certainly, obviously, every pun intended, leaves a sort of bittersweet taste in people's mouths at the moment, doesn't it? So you don't want to make people uncomfortable at the end of the day.
Do you know what has always intrigued me? When they obviously find out in the interviews beforehand and they say, what's your worst phobia? What can you not bear? And somebody goes, oh, I don't like eels. And then all of a sudden they're trapped in a coffin with a load of eels. Why do people sort of spill their guts about what do they not like? I'd say, oh, I don't like heights or something, knowing fine, well, I could deal with the heights thing. But people just pour out their soul, and then that's what they're lumbered with. What would you say, Jackie, as being the one thing after having watched I'm a Celebrity you just couldn't deal with? Paul's already shuddering with the eels thing. He's
Is he? I'm okay with creepy crawlies and stuff because I did a zoology degree way back many moons ago. I was a zoologist, was my first job, so I actually actively like snakes and spiders and things like that. And the dark freaks me out a little bit. I think those challenges that are in the dark are a bit scary. I'm okay with heights, but being locked, when they lock them in coffins underground and stuff, I don't like that. That to me is scary. I'm slightly claustrophobic, and being in dark, small places I'd be a bit panicky, I think. But the animals are fine. I like snakes and spiders. I have to rescue my husband from spiders all the time. Moths, all sorts of things he freaks out about. So I'm all over all that stuff. I'm fine with
Jackie, I'm the person who deals with spiders in this house too.
Shut it, slug girl.
Paul saying shut.
No, Rachel, poor old Paul's getting a real drubbing on this particular.
No, he's saying shut it, slug girl. I have to say,
point out that he has styled out your shed into a television studio beautifully. So when it's permissible for him to travel, I could do with getting a man in to put a bit of gloss over this. Okay.
he is, in fairness to him, he is actually just pointing out, if I was faced with a 1 centimetre slug in the jungle, I would be shooting up the trees. You wouldn't see me for dust. We're coming to the end of the broadcast now. I just need to know, what are you both going to really look forward to doing? Richard, I know you're going to want to see your mum, but what else are you really looking forward to doing?
Every time I go out for a walk with the dog, no, she's not here at the moment. Every time I go out for a walk with Clemmy, and I'm literally licking the windows of my local, which is probably not advisable in this current climate. But
No.
literally, I passed the local watering holes that we're so used to. It's a Sunday pint, isn't it? And God bless them, our local the Sculpt here has started doing. They're draining their barrels into these 8-pint kegs. So I sort of treat myself to one of those at the weekend, because you just want to taste a pint, rather than out of a bottle. So yeah, I think that would be it. Just something as simple as sitting in a pub garden, frankly, and racing a pint with pals would do me. I think all of our worlds, if you like, have shrunk quite a bit. London suddenly feels quite a big place now, because you're so used to having your sphere of reference or movement certainly restricted and reduced. So a simple pint would be magnificent, with a packet of salt and vinegar crisps. With a bit of syrup.
I'm sure there's a lot of people agreeing with you. Jackie, what would yours be?
It's funny you say that, isn't it? Because it's the little things. I think this has taught us how little we actually need to make us happy. Yeah, I'm not missing restaurants. I'm not missing anything fancy at all. I'm missing hugs the most, actually. I'm quite a huggy person, and I really, really miss my friends, and just a hug with a friend, and just physical contact. I've got my husband, but
But
I mean, you get a bit bored with that, don't you? But no, I miss hugs a lot. But it's funny, because I was talking to my friend Sophie on the phone the other day, and we were saying this very thing. What do you miss the most? And she says, I miss going to the dump. And I said,
yes,
I miss going to the garden centre. And we're like, how rock and roll are we? The dump and the garden centre, what we miss the most, apart from hugs. It's those two things. It's just, rock and roll. But yeah, it's the little things. It's the little things.
Oh, well, thank you so much for giving up your time tonight, both of you. It has been an absolute joy to have you in my shed. And I hope the rest of lockdown passes swimmingly for the pair of you. Thank you both very much. Thanks everybody for watching as well. Goodbye.
Lovely to see you, Jackie.
Bye.